Brutal truths. What ancient Egypt ate at midnight, shocking junk foods you'd never believe. In the shadowy depths of night, as the stars flickered overhead like celestial lanterns, ancient Egypt held secrets darker than its enthralling pyramids. What if I told you that right beneath the grandeur of the Nile lay tales of midnight munchies so bizarre they would make your jaw drop? Picture this: pharaohs poised on their thrones, chains of gold glittering, feasting not just on figs and honey, but indulging in crushed beetles mixed with honeyed dates. The thought alone sends shivers down your spine. And yet, it's true, their dark, twisted cravings revealed a culture that danced on the edge of the bizarre, like a shadow flickering in candlelight. Imagine the cool evening air carrying the cries of vendors selling something truly unusual. You can almost hear the clattering of pots as they spread out trays of roasted quail stuffed with honey and spices. But wait, there's more. Slaves were said to mix wine and milk, a cocktail that locals would sip under the watchful eyes of their gods. The very same gods that supposedly found humor in watching mortals indulge in such unusual delicacies. And just when you think it couldn't get stranger, word has it that certain priests performed bizarre rituals where they consumed fish fermented in brine akin to pickled horror. The pungent aroma drifted to the heavens, left to rise like a ghastly fog, as whispers of their midnight feast spread through the darkened corridors of history. It was as if each bite offered power from beyond, an enticement to taste the divine. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But lo, the moon was still high, and the shadows danced as curious minds opened doors to realms of hidden flavors. Was there witchcraft involved in their gourmet cravings? As the secrets unfolded, whispers of tales untold beckoned like the sirens from the rivers of time. What other nocturnal indulgences lay hidden in those ancient sands? Would they reveal a glimpse into darker rituals, where food held power beyond mere consumption? What horrors, what delights, lingered in the air like the chilling breeze that swept through the tombs? The night was just beginning. A deep shroud of mystery hung over the Nile, the waters glistening darkly as night enveloped the land. As whispers of peculiar feasts lingered in the air like drifting fog, a figure emerged from the hidden shadows, a young scribe named Anouk. Driven by bone-deep curiosity, she sought the truth behind the strange cravings that danced through the city. Anouk had heard the tales, the hushed gawks of vendors, the mad laughter of those who dared to sample the forbidden food. Driven to uncover more, she crept through narrow alleyways, her heart pounding like a drum. What lay ahead was more than a simple midnight meal. It was an invitation into the heart of darkness. As she navigated her way through the labyrinthine streets, the tantalizing aroma of roasting flesh pulled her closer. From a distance, she could make out the flickering glow of a fire, and the sounds of an unusual gathering tickled her ears. The chaotic mixture of laughter and chants wrapped around her like a serpent, tightening as she approached. It led her to a secluded courtyard where a group of ecstatic revelers feasted upon a bizarre spread that would haunt her dreams. A cacophony of colors dazzled her eyes, plates piled high with roasted quail, meats slathered in rich sauces, and bowls brimming with unidentifiable dark treats that squirmed and twitched. The sight was grotesque yet spellbinding. She could feel her stomach turn, yet a hunger in her spirit urged her deeper into the darkness of the crowd. In the center of the throng stood an imposing figure, a high priest adorned in ornate feathers and intricate jewelry, his face painted to reflect the gods he so fervently invoked. Anouk's breath hitched. What truly transpired in these midnight gatherings? Was it simply a feast, or something far more sinister? Come closer, little one. The priestess' voice boomed, inviting yet laced with an unsettling edge. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, allowing her to step forward. The laughter quieted to curious murmurs. Anouk's heart raced as she joined the assembly. The priest raised a ceremonial dagger, glinting under the moonlight. Tonight, We celebrate the flavor of life and death," he proclaimed, and the crowd erupted in fervor. With an unexpected flourish, he sliced into a dish of fish that shimmered with a metallic glaze. The pungent smell wafted toward her, overwhelming her senses. Was this the taste of eternity, of God's watching, feasting, and judging? Her chest tightened with trepidation as she pondered whether she was ready to partake in this madness. She looked around. Faces glimmered with anticipation, eyes wide and hungry. Would she dare take a bite? Or would she retreat from this terrifying revelation of humanity's darkest cravings? Just as her courage wavered, the priest's voice cut through the air again. To understand the power of the gods, one must embrace the forbidden. Are you with us, Anouk? Her name echoed through the courtyard, drowning her in a sea of uncertainty. Suddenly, the very ground felt unstable beneath her feet. What decisions would she make in that chilling moment? What unspeakable truths might unfold with each bite she chose to take? As Anouk stood caught between fear and a surreal yearning, the truth loomed just beyond her grasp. What secrets of the pharaohs awaited discovery? The night had only just begun, and Anouk was teetering on the edge of revelations that could shatter her understanding of life and death. Would she dive deeper into this abyss? Or would she flee from the horrors whispered in the night? Anouk stood frozen, the words of the priest wrapping around her like chains. She felt her pulse racing. The atmosphere crackled with a frenetic energy that pulled her inward, inching her closer to the surreal gathering. What was she truly stepping into? The priest's eyes glittered with a mix of fervor and madness, igniting something deep within Anouk, a longing for knowledge or perhaps a craving for unimaginable experiences. "Join us," a voice called out from the crowd. "Let the gods guide your hunger." She could hardly breathe. The intoxicating scent swirling in the air teased her senses, making her stomach churn, part hunger, part dread. Each beat of the drums resonated within her, amplifying her sense of foreboding. What sacrifices had these revelers truly made for this daredevil dining? Beside her, a man with wild hair and sunken eyes reached for a plate, his fingers trembling as they grasped a dark morsel. The crowd watched him with a mix of excitement and anticipation. With a deep breath, he raised the dish to his lips, swallowed, and exhaled sharply, a sound that echoed like a cry of ecstasy mingled with anguish. Anouk's heart raced. A visceral fear surged through her. What if she was next? Would she be consumed by the very darkness she sought to understand? "Are you ready to taste the divine?" The priest's question fell like a guillotine, and the crowd exploded with wild cheers, their chants rising and falling like waves crashing onto the shore. Anouk could feel their gaze, heavy and expectant, 100 eyes waiting for her to make her choice. She felt a sudden rush of vertigo, the courtyard spinning in dizzying patterns. A true feast for the gods, or a trap meant to ensnare her spirit, leaving only a hollow shell behind? The sweetness of the roasted quail called to her, but the writhing black treats filled her with dread. What filled those wrappings? What darkness lay beneath their disturbing exterior? "Will you let fear govern your truth?" The high priest beckoned her forward, brandishing the dagger like an extension of himself, a weapon ready to carve through the veil of reality. "Embrace the unknown, for therein lies your destiny." Shivers danced along her spine as he held the dagger aloft, the blade mirroring the glimmering stars above. She glanced around at the throng. One woman, her face smeared with dark sauce and trailing whispers of laughter, caught Anouk's eye. "Join us, Anouk," she called. "Know what the gods demand." But the other part of her screamed to run, to escape this madness. The weight of history pressed down on her, threatening to crush her soul or ignite it into flames of revelation. With every heartbeat, her mind battled her spirit, each part pulling her in opposite directions. The chilling laughter swirled in the air, suffocating her thoughts, clouding her judgment. What price for breath, for revelation, would she pay in this den of shadows? The dagger twinkled, enticing her closer, as the crowd began to chant again, a rhythmic plea that seeped into her very bones. Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled as the earth itself seemed to awaken, sending ripples of unease through the assembly. Anouk's heart thundered louder than the drums, a primal urge to flee clashing with her insatiable thirst for understanding, and in that instant, the choice crystallized, Would she consume the unknown and embrace its terror, or turn her back on the feast, forever haunted by this night? A shrill cry pierced the air as the crowd parted, revealing the source of the tremors, something colossal emerging from the shadows. The priest's voice thundered above the chaos, but Anouk's world narrowed, focus locking onto the emerging figure. What unfathomable horror awaited her gaze, and what truths would unfold just beyond her reach? As the darkness surged forward, she realized that this midnight reverie was only the beginning. The figure emerged, lumbering into the lantern light like a bad dream come to life. Anouk's breath hitched. It wasn't just colossal, it was otherworldly. Towering above the throng, covered in ancient symbols and shimmering as if carved from pitch-black obsidian, it moved with a slow, deliberate grace that sent chills cascading down her spine. It was a man, or possibly a creature covered in rags and remnants of time long past, a crown of twisted horns spiraling from its head. The crowd fell silent, eyes widening in anticipation, fear, and maybe some form of reverence. Anouk could hardly think as her heart raced wildly, thudding as if attempting to escape the horror unfolding before her. "Behold!" the priest proclaimed, thrusting the blade higher into the air. "The great spirit of hunger awakens. Are you worthy of its gaze? Will you offer your devotion?" Cold dread wrapped around her, squeezing her throat. She was drawn in, mesmerized by the figure's haunting presence. She fought against the urge to step closer, to seek what secrets it held. But the overwhelming instinct to run bubbled up in her mind, perilously close to the surface. "So, the great Anouk stands before the darkness," the towering figure boomed, its voice echoing like thunder in the hollow night. Each word vibrated through her bones, seeping into her very essence. "Do you wish to know what the gods demand?" The people around her began to chant again, a haunting melody that mixed with the pulse of the drums, the vibrations shaking her to her core. Their faces glistened with anticipation, hungering for knowledge as if it was not only food they wished to consume. It was truth, raw and unvarnished. "No! This isn't what I came for," she thought, struggling to regain control of her spiraling emotions. She hadn't prepared for this, the incredible spectacle that seemed to hold her captive, pulling her into something deep and dark. Suddenly, a louder voice pierced through her internal chaos. "The gods will demand a sacrifice." It was the wild-haired man, now brandishing a plate of writhing black morsels towards the creature. His eyes were wide and frenzied, caught in the euphoria of impending revelation. "We must feed the darkness. Only then can we know the truth it hides." The tension in the crowd shifted. Anouk felt the air thicken around her, charged with a desperation that nearly suffocated her. Would they really offer themselves up, or was there a perilous game afoot? Would this encounter lead to wisdom, or would it strip them of their very essence, infusing them with eternal madness? Her own instincts kicked in. A gut-wrenching dread of what it would mean to surrender. Was she prepared to feed the creature, spirit, or whatever ancient horror it truly was? An ancient hunger swirled around her, almost seductive. She felt her limbs go numb. But just as the crowd began to fall into a synchronous rhythm, Anouk snapped back, fueled by rebellion. "No!" she shouted against the chaos. "I want to be a pawn in your game." All eyes turned to her, stunned silence sweeping the collective. The priest's gaze darkened, his smile fading as he lowered the dagger an inch. What had she just done? "Very well, Anouk," the creature rasped, each word dripping like poison. "Then you will bear witness to what happens when the offerings are denied." Her heart dropped. This was no longer just a feast, it was a confrontation. With the swirling shadows pressing closer, she spiraled into uncertainty. What revelations were about to unfold? What horror awaited her in this realm of gods and shadows? As the darkness closed in, Anouk realized she was no longer merely an observer. She was at the very heart of their terrifying truth. What sacrifices were truly being made under the promise of enlightenment? And would she survive to share what she'd uncovered? The shadows twisted and pulled closer, swirling like a sentient storm around Anouk. Her breath quickened, the steady drumming of her heart now drowning out all other sound. Fear enveloped her like a shroud. She felt the eyes of the creature boring into her, a mirror of the awestruck faces from the crowd. Each spectator seemed transfixed, unable to muster even a whisper in response to her defiance. The priest's grip tightened on the dagger, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury as he processed her rejection. Sacrifice, the voice rumbled, low and dangerous. The creature's long, gnarled fingers unfurled, revealing nails like ancient claws, dripping with what looked like shadows themselves. What is a sacrifice but an offering of the self? Shall we witness the price of defiance? Anouk clenched her hands, nails digging into her palms as a sense of power surged within her. Defiance felt dangerous but also intoxicating. She gazed at the figure, refusing to flinch. You want a witness? She shouted, her voice barely cutting through the thick tension. Then let me witness the truth behind all of this. The room trembled with silence, the priest finally finding his voice again. Evade the truth, and it will consume you. You'll wish you had offered yourself willingly. At that, the creature leered, shadows dancing around its horns in a sinister ballet. If you choose to gaze upon the abyss, prepare to be marked by its hunger. A gasp erupted from the crowd, their shared fear now palpable, manifesting in shivers and whispers. Anouk felt the air change, thickening with an energy that felt alive. It wasn't just fear. It was feral excitement, a tribal call to partake in something far beyond their understanding. They thrummed with urgency, desperate for a connection to the divine, the ancient hunger beckoning them to dive into the dark. The priest stepped forward, the blade gleaming in the lantern lights. What will you offer, great Anouk? Speak your truth, and free your kinsfolk from hunger's grasp. Anouk's thoughts raced. She had never been one to shy away from danger. This was her moment, a chance to push against the tide. I offer myself, but not as a sacrifice. I offer my voice. My will. A murmur spread like wildfire through the crowd. They hungered for more than mere offerings. They craved liberation from shadows that plagued their lives for too long. The creature's laughter echoed, a chilling sound that sent spikes of terror through Anouk. Foolish child! Can a mere mortal believe they can sway the ancient desires? The blood of your kin murmurs for release, and a mere voice? With a swift flick, the priest raised the dagger towards her. Anouk's pulse pounded in her ears, each heartbeat a countdown. But she met his gaze, calm washing over her in stark contrast to the chaos brewing around. Try me, she said, the words a challenge. I know what fear does, it consumes. But what isn't known can be conquered. The crowd began to echo her words, clenching fists in shared determination. Perhaps, the creature murmured, uncertain yet intrigued. Perhaps the offering of truth bears its own weight. Suddenly, the air shifted, the ground trembled beneath them, and Anouk realized the shadows were recoiling, intrigued, but not yet ready to recede. The drums pulsed harder, and the atmosphere vibrated with an unspoken promise. What truth lay buried in the depths of their fears? What realities did she dare to expose? The moment teetered on the edge, a cliff hanging over unfathomable power and darkness. As the creature leaned closer, Anouk's heart raced anew. She had summoned something hidden, something sacred. But would she survive the backlash of that truth? The crowd seemed poised, a collective breath held tight in the dawning realization that their lives were irrevocably changing. What nightmarish revelations awaited as she reached deeper into the unknown shadows? And what further horrors would her will awaken? The air crackled with tension, a live wire pulsing against Anouk's skin. Shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, twisting and curling, demanding attention. The creature leaned closer, its putrid breath washing over her like a tide, thick and overwhelming. Anouk fought to remain grounded, but fear threatened to pull her under. Speak, child, the creature hissed, its voice dripping with a mix of disdain and intrigue. Reveal the truth you dare to unleash. Every nerve in her body was on fire. Anouk's heart hammered, drowning out the chaotic whispers from the crowd. They watched, riveted and expectant. What would she show them? What dark corners of their fate would be illuminated? She took a deep breath, her body trembling but her voice steady. The truth, she began, is that we have fed our souls to fear for too long. We have allowed shadows to define us, giving them power over our lives. The crowd stirred, a low hum of agreement echoing through the air. Anouk felt the energy shift. It was an awakening, a flicker of hope rising beneath the fear. The creature's eyes narrowed, intrigued but suspicious. "And what does that mean, Anouk? What will you do with this truth?" "I will show you," she declared, voice rising with conviction. "We can break free from this cycle. We can choose to confront our fears rather than hide from them." The shadows seemed to pulse with disdain, momentarily retreating as if unsure how to respond. But beneath Anouk's words lay an undercurrent of desperation, a plea for understanding. She could feel the priest's grip on the blade tighten, his confusion mixing with anger. "Stop this madness!" he shouted, desperation raising his voice. "You are toying with forces far beyond the understanding of mortals. Do not provoke them further." But Anouk pressed on, her heart racing with a wild blend of fear and exhilaration. The truth surged through her. "You've let the shadows dictate your lives. Your fear has become a prison cell, locking away your potential." The crowd began to shift again, caught in a swell of collective desire to break free. Faces morphed from fear to determination, a gritty resolve settled in their eyes. The creature laughed, a sound that echoed ominously in the hall. "You think you can sway destiny with such foolishness? Mortals do not dictate the rules of the ancients." But Anouk sensed the shadows hesitating, and in that moment she pressed the attack. "We can reclaim our strength. We can confront the darkness together. No more offerings of fear, only an offering of truth." The priest faltered, and for the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered in the creature's depths. Anouk seized that heartbeat of doubt, pushing forward with every ounce of courage she had left. "Let your stories of fear be told," she exclaimed. "Let us illuminate the dark corners, not just for ourselves but for generations to come." The crowd responded with a roar, voices rising in unison. "We will illuminate the dark!" Their chant intertwined with the beating of their hearts, drowning out the shadows. But as the energy intensified, Anouk felt a shift deep within her. The shadows lurched forward, unsettlingly alive, and she realized they were now more furious than ever. The balance of power was tilting, and she had stirred something dangerous. The creature's laughter morphed into a snarl, dark fury igniting in its eyes. "Foolish girl! You have awakened something that will not be silenced." Anouk's breath caught in her throat as the air grew thick with an unseen threat. Instinctively she took a step back, but the call of the crowd pushed her forward. Would she stand firm against the storm she had conjured? The shadows clung to her, swarming her senses, each whisper a haunting reminder that the darkness wouldn't quietly retreat. Anguish twisted in her gut, the realization dawning that they were all about to face the consequences of this reckoning. Would she be swept away in the tide of darkness? Or was there strength hidden among the truths she had yet to reveal? With the crowd forging ahead, Anouk prepared for whatever nightmare lay ahead, and as something twisted and dark broke free from the shadows, one question resonated in her mind: what truth would they have to confront to escape it once and for all? The ground trembled underfoot as the shadows surged forward, a swirling tempest of darkness and rage. Anouk felt them close in, a suffocating weight that threatened to drag her under. The whispers grew louder, clawing at her mind, feeding off the fear emanating from the crowd. She stood resolute, breathing through the fear that constricted her chest. "We are not your puppets!" she shouted, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. Her voice echoed in the chamber, mingling with the rapid heartbeat of the onlookers. "We define our own paths." But the creature, once merely a hissing figure in the gloom, now towered over her, an embodiment of pure malevolence. It roared, a sound that shook the very air around them. "You think yourself powerful, little girl? You are naught but a fleeting thought among the endless void." The crowd swelled with nervous energy, their faces drawn tight with anxiety and uncertainty. Was this the end? Had Anouk's newfound courage stirred a darkness that would consume them all? She could see the fear creeping back into their eyes, threatening to drown out the light she had ignited. In that moment, she hesitated, doubt gnawing at her resolve. Perhaps the shadows were right. Maybe her truth was a lie, and they were all just players in a grand, twisted game. But then a glimmer of determination sparked within her, ignited by the hopeful roars of the crowd. "No!" she screamed, the words slicing through the thick tension. "This is not how it ends." The shadows paused, a moment of confusion rippling through their ranks. Anouk took a breath, letting that flicker of courage blossom into a flame. "Don't let them control you. Our fears can unite us, not tear us apart." The crowd responded, hesitantly at first. Then, emboldened by her conviction, they began to chant again. "We are stronger together! We are stronger together!" As their voices rose, a wave surged through the room. The shadows hissed, swirling violently, their energy crackling like a storm. Anouk felt their fury but also sensed a flicker of uncertainty within them. "Look!" someone shouted from the back, and a wave of gasps rippled through the throng. The priestess' grip on the blade faltered, eyes wide with disbelief. It's changing!" Anouk's heart raced as she turned her gaze to the creature, which now seemed to flicker. Was it possible? Could courage truly weaken the darkness? The shadows around the creature faltered, retreating, as if unsure how to combat the rising tide of collective strength. "Foolish mortals," the creature clawed at the air, its form becoming more unstable. "You will regret this." But Anouk pressed on, the heat of the moment seeping into her bones. "No more! No more fear!" she shouted, words bursting forth like a dam breaking. Without warning, the shadows lunged, intertwining with the very essence of her truth, threatening to unravel everything she had fought for. Panic surged through her as the shadows tightened their grip. She could see the faces of her friends, their horror mirrored in the chaos around them. "Fight it, Anouk!" a voice cried. It sounded like her best friend, Lila. The love and support coursing through those words wrapped around her heart, tightening until it thumped as fiercely as the crowd's chant. Anouk closed her eyes, drawing deep within herself. She felt the center of her fear, the real, primal terror she had suppressed for so long. But could she survive it? With every ounce of strength, she called forth her truth again. "Fear is not our enemy. It is a part of us, but it does not define us. Together we are lights in the darkness." The shadows shrieked, thrashing wildly, as the unity of the crowd surged like a wave. It was an avalanche of hope crashing against the expanse of darkness before her. But just as it seemed their strength might vanquish the shadows, a deep rumble echoed as though the earth itself questioned their resolve. What lay beneath that rumble? A darker truth? A force they couldn't overcome? The shadows writhed, and Anouk could feel their hunger intensifying, feeding off her very being. With a burst of clarity, she realized the truth they all needed to confront might be buried deeper than she had ever dreamed. What ancient fear would they have to face to fully escape this nightmare? The air thickened around Anouk, stifling her thoughts as dread twisted in her stomach. Each pulse from the dark entity reverberated in her bones, and the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the next move. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of dissonant voices rising and falling, clawing at her mind, but she held firm. Then, through the chaos, she caught sight of something unexpected. A shimmer at the back of the chamber. A figure cloaked in deep indigo appeared, woven with threads that glinted like starlight, stepping steadily toward the fray. Who were they? Could they be an ally or a harbinger of something much worse? The figure raised one hand, silencing the discordant murmurs. Anouk squinted, searching for a hint of familiarity, hope, anything that could tether her to sanity amid the brewing storm. But the shadows weren't done. They coiled, ready to strike, sensing the movement toward hope and preparing for a counterattack. "Anouk!" Lila's voice broke through her calculations. "Watch out!" Before she could react, black tendrils lashed out from the creature, aiming straight at her heart. In that split second, Anouk felt the pull of everything she had ever feared. Her childhood memories washed over her, whispers of doubt from harsh voices, shadows lurking under her bed at night. Those memories melted from trivial into primal, real fears that dragged on her soul. She staggered backward, nearly losing her footing. But the mysterious figure caught her gaze, their eyes bright with determination. "Hold fast. Remember who you are." That single phrase resonated like a call to arms. A memory surged within her, an ancient lesson: courage isn't the absence of fear but the will to confront it. An incandescent glow ignited in her chest, filling her limbs with renewed strength. Together, we face this darkness, Anouk shouted, fusing her voice with the mysterious figure, who joined her side, their presence exuding confidence. With a sweeping gesture, the figure summoned a sphere of light that repelled the oncoming shadows momentarily. The crowd gasped, stunned by the sudden burst of brilliance. Suddenly it wasn't just Anouk who felt empowered. She could see it in their eyes, the flutter of hope rekindling. They were listening. They were ready. Together, they could push this darkness back once and for all. As the shadows recoiled, their hiss turned to fury. "You are fools to resist! You think this light can save you?" A new wave of dread swept through the chamber as the earth quaked beneath them. Anouk felt an electrifying surge of adrenaline. She stepped forward, raising her arms. "We are not afraid. Light comes from within us. Fear is not our enemy. It is the very force that gives our courage meaning." The shadows writhed, spitting and thrashing at her defiance. "I am your greatest fear, Anouk!" They snarled, tendrils whipping violently, seeking to ensnare her once more. But each word she spoke ignited the flame of truth in her friends. "We are stronger than fear!" they echoed, their voices weaving a tapestry of defiance that enveloped her. Lila shouted from the edge of the crowd, "We trust you!" With those words, the mysterious figure surged beside her, and together they directed the luminous energy toward the creature. As the light pierced the shadowy mass, a blinding burst erupted, momentarily casting aside the darkness, revealing memories trapped within. Anouk gasped, and the waves of ancient fear crashed against her heart anew, faces from her past twisted in anger, pain, and suffering. Recognizing them now as her own insecurities. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself, panic bubbling under the surface. The crowd began to falter in their chanting as visions of failure and doubt filled their minds, threatening to swallow their resolve. "We are losing them!" the figure yelled, leaning closer. "We have to find the root of this darkness together. Let us uncover the truth." Anouk could feel the weight of expectation on her shoulders. With trembling hands, she steadied herself. "Together, we will confront our deepest fears. We must dig deeper." But as she shouted out her call, the air seemed to still, pregnant with a tension that coiled tighter with every heartbeat. What was lurking beneath the surface, waiting for this very moment to be unleashed? The shadows began to churn once more, and Anouk felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Were they ready to confront an ancient terror? "Anouk!" Lila's voice pierced through the disorienting haze. "Is this really what we want?" With light flickering around them, Anouk hesitated at the cliffs of truth. What ancient fear awaited them? Would they find liberation or ruin? The moment hung heavy in the air, stretched thin by uncertainty. Anouk's heart pounded in her chest like a war drum, drowning out the whispers of fear that wrapped tightly around her. Shadows danced closer, the tendrils flicking through the air like hungry snakes, each strike calculated to sever her newfound courage. "Anouk, please!" Lila's voice trembled, laced with panic. "This isn't just about us anymore." She turned her gaze back to the crowd, faces contorted in confusion, dread slipping like quicksand. Would they abandon her now? Could she still rally them against such unimaginable darkness? Feeling the weight of her own shadow creeping up, she knew she had to act fast. "No!" she shouted, her voice cracking. "Don't let them in. You are not your fears." The shimmering figure beside her locked eyes with Anouk, flickering in and out of focus, as if struggling against a powerful tide. "Remember the tales of your childhood, Anouk. The legends that taught you how to fight. They are not just stories." Anouk's mind raced. The legends, those had filled her heart with warmth and strength. Could those threads of ancient wisdom be the key to unlock this nightmare? "Okay," she breathed, grounding herself. "Together, we face this together." As if summoned by her resolve, the shadows recoiled slightly, swirling in agitation. "You dare?" they hissed, their voices layered and overlapping, an unsettling chorus threatening to drown out her spirit. "You think you can outrun your past? Their taunt sparked a fresh wave of fear, but somewhere beneath it flickered the fire of recollection. Images flashed through her mind: children playing, friends united, moments when laughter had chased away the darkness. Those were her truths. Memories woven with light. With a fierce cry, Anouk raised her arms, channeling that raw energy, transforming vulnerability into strength. Shadows fade when light is shared, she bellowed. Feel the vibrations of her words cascade through the crowd. Let their darkness rise to meet the light within us. The sphere of light pulsed beside her, their connection firming into a brilliant beam that shot into the depths of the chamber. The shadows squalled, echoing desperation and anger, but the light pushed back, cleaving through the darkness like a sword breaking through a shroud of mist. The ground quaked wildly, and the chamber began to tremor, as though shaking off an ancient curse. Fools! Light cannot prevail! The shadows screamed, and with an ear-splitting crack, the walls darkened, revealing flooding nightmares, grotesque shapes emerging from the depths. Anouk felt bile rise in her throat. These were no mere memories, they were her trauma. Her insecurities latched onto the tendrils of the shadows now clamoring for her soul. No! Lila shouted, her voice a fraying thread of sanity amidst the chaos. We can't let them show us fear. No more! Anouk shouted back. Let us unearth what has been buried. We will rewrite these stories. As they stood side by side, Anouk felt the air thicken again, the shadows writhed intensely, pushing against the light. An image materialized, a familiar face twisted in an eternal lament. The person she had admired, a source of strength, turned into a symbol of doubt. Branches of darkness snaked around her, but she didn't flinch. You do not control my narrative, she declared fiercely, stepping forward, drawing the shadows toward herself. As if responding to her declaration, the shadows began to recoil, yet every step forward into her own past seemed to ignite their rage, stirring them like a swarm of disturbed beasts. The terrifying cry of her insecurities threatened to drown her. What will it be, Anouk? The foreboding voice of the shadows reverberated, drenching the air with pressure. Will you stand here and confront us, or run back to your ignorance? Anouk's breaths became shallow, eyes darting around her friends, their faces gripped with an urgency that matched her own. Fear warred with newfound courage in her chest. Together, Lila's whisper melded into a chorus from the crowd. We confront it together. But even as they rallied around her, the shadows surged, a monstrous wave crashing relentlessly. Did she have the power to pierce through the chaotic veil of trauma and emerge whole? The truth loomed closer, ominous and electric. What awaited inside those darkest memories? Anouk's heart pounded, every throb igniting a fresh resolve. She took a deep breath, letting it shatter her lingering doubts. As the shadows lunged again, tendrils reaching for their last chance at despair, Anouk steeled herself. Would this be the moment of reckoning? Or the plunge into despair? Now! She roared, plunging into the shadows surrounding her, a heart ablaze with determination. But what she couldn't see was lurking just beyond. What would they discover together in this dark abyss? Anouk plunged into the shadows, her heart racing like a wild stallion. The darkness enveloped her, clawing at her skin, but she pressed on with every ounce of strength. It whispered her fears, her memories, and the unanswered questions of her past. Face it! She screamed into the void. I am not afraid. As she forged deeper, flashes of her life erupted like fireworks in the night a childhood friend betrayed, endless nights filled with doubt, moments of feeling utterly alone. Each image felt real, as if pulling her back into the depths of her despair. But she held tight to a memory of laughter shared, the warmth of connection, and love that soared over the shadows. Together! Lila's voice rang out from the crowd, a lifeline in the tumult. We're with you! Suddenly, light erupted from Anouk, born from the bond shared with her friends, illuminating the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. The shadows recoiled, howling in anguish as the light burst forth like a dawn breaking through the crushing weight of night. Together! She roared again. Together, we face our fears! With every word, the light grew, pushing the shadows back, revealing truths buried for too long. Each pulse of brightness infused courage into the crowd, their collective energy igniting a fire that spiraled around Anouk. She could feel unity humming in her bones, vibrating in sync with their heartbeats, each person a beacon against the chaos. The shadows shrieked angrily, thrashing like a serpent wounded in battle. "No! You will not escape!" they hissed, slashing out with claws that seemed to reach for her very soul. But she was ready. "We are not afraid. We choose our own stories." With that declaration, Anouk took a step forward, the light radiating from her hands, and struck at the swirling mass of darkness. With a brilliant burst, she connected with the heart of her fears. And in that moment, she confronted the specters of her past. The faces twisted in anguish came into focus, revealing not just enemies, but fragmented pieces of herself, hurt, loss, and healing. Each pulse of light brought clarity. "Forgive us!" A voice echoed through the dark, a voice she finally recognized as her own. "Forgive the parts that haunt you. We are all flawed, but we can find peace." The shadows, once consumed with rage, began to flicker and dim. The realization hit hard: these parts were not to be feared, but embraced. They were her teachers, guiding her. With each acknowledgement, the memories softened, transforming from torment to lessons learned. The creature's roar grew weak, maddened and confused. "You dare defy me?" it screeched, but panic laced its fury. "Yes," Anouk shouted, voice ringing with resolve. "We dare to live in truth. We dare to rewrite our fates." The crowd surged, their voices rising like a wave. "We are not afraid. We hold the power." Anouk felt an electric connection, energy blooming like petals unfurling in sunlight. If they united their strength and faced the depths together, they would be unstoppable. With the final push, Anouk unleashed the light fully, shattering the lingering darkness until it burst into shards, scattering like ashes on the wind. As the shadows dissolved, a heavy silence blanketed the courtyard. Anouk stood there, breathless but unyielding, feeling the warmth of connection with each person around her. They had faced the abyss and emerged. Together, they had rewritten their truth from a tale of fear to one of hope. The high priest lowered his dagger, shock etched across his face. The creature that had haunted them dissipated, dissolving into the ether as the darkness lost its hold. Voices erupted into cheers, waves of relief washing over them. Lila rushed to Anouk's side, tears streaming down her cheeks, and hugged her fiercely. "You did it! We did it!" Anouk looked around at the faces illuminated by triumph, the air buzzing with newfound energy. The fear, the shadowy burdens, it all felt lighter, almost surreal. They had changed the narrative. From this day on, Anouk proclaimed, "We remember not what shackled us but what set us free." And as they gathered under the moonlight, the darkness retreated like a bad dream, each soul at peace, knowing that together they could conquer anything. The night stretched into dawn, new beginnings shimmering in the whispers of the breeze. Life would go on, but for Anouk and her friends, this was not just the end of an ancient story. It was the beginning of their own, woven deeply within the fabric of hope, courage, and collective strength. Don't let their journey end here. If you want to hear more incredible stories, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button, let's feed the algorithm. And flood the comments. How do you feel about Anouk's transformation? What theories do you have about what's next? Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Your support is everything.